This game is fine. A micro-scaled SimCity that focuses more around just surviving on meats and berries until you start having kids who, with a little education, can farm and generate tons of food so you can focus on more important things, like trading 1,000 logs for a couple seeds or day drinking. For being 6 years old, I experienced no crashes or graphical problems, which I wish I could say for other games around 6 years old. But as a medieval city building game, your goal is to keep people alive and also create a cool shitville hut village. Citizen happiness is a reoccurring element in these types of games, but Banished brings health, food, and warmth, which all factor back into happiness. Happiness keeps people working, which leads back into health as well. This game is an interesting cycle, but balancing the two is basically the whole game. Let's say I put a mine down, which decreases overall happiness, but I build 2 wells and a tavern in the same area and everyone's alright. Happiness and health are very temperamental. The assortment of food, access to herbs, and even if you're trading or letting in too many immigrants can cause decreased health overall, or just straight up disease outbreak like scarlet fever or shitting, which can be stopped by a hospital, if a physician is there that is. The way to keep your population up is absolute expansion. Keep your city connected with roads and expand outward in a realistic way. Wooden houses should be turned into stone when you're just sitting on excess stone and iron, and jobs are what keep the gameplay loop easy to handle. Despite the look of it, this game acts a tiny bit like an RTS, except that it's just the base building part, and anyone can be a servitor or a space construction vehicle. Anyone without a job is considered a laborer and will clear out resources and move them to a stockpile. They will also move all the food from a storage barn into their house to starve out their neighbors. A builder will construct houses or resource gathering areas like fishing piers or hunting cabins. Those create more opportunities for jobs but lower your laborer forces, making it slower to create new buildings. I suggest as soon as you spawn into a map, you just create a boarding house, then clear a large immediate area around the house. That way you'll have plenty of wood, stone, and iron for the immediate future, until you can comfortably build a forester lodge or a quarry without worrying about starving to death from a lack of food. Food would be your biggest enemy in the early game. Hunting and gathering societies rarely expanded much until they started agriculture, so that should be your first step. Creating crop fields offer you food once a year, but it's quite a bit. But a good field needs workers, and with the tiny amount of citizens you'll have at the beginning, you will find yourself pining to expand but with no comfortable way to do so yet. Building too many houses will create too many families who will have children, so the town requires much more food to keep you alive. However, if you don't create more houses, your citizens will get too old and frail to fuck anymore. Or if they're under 3 stars of happiness, they won't either. So if you don't want your town to become Japan in 100 years, you should invest in a few houses and wells while you're trying to seed and breed. All this can occur because food is such a precious commodity in the first hour. Your villagers won't always die peacefully of old age at 46, however. There are 3 jobs which are the most dangerous and don't expect many to survive: mining, quarrying, and childbirth. Uneducated workers and those with poor tools will die trying to get your precious stone, iron, and charcoal. And the childbirth thing, I don't know, maybe it has something to do with the health or it's just for fun. To educate workers, you have to get them young. Children can go to school, and when they grow up they'll be better workers who will be much more productive, gaining more meat per animal kill or not slipping on a rock and breaking their body. Tools help everything else that education doesn't. They'll mine faster or get more logs per tree. While they can work without tools, they'll just be a little bit shitty and should die in a mysterious murder accident in the quarry. One thing that bugs me is the lack of specifics. This game is scared of forcing you to upgrade along a linear path besides wood houses to stone houses, but I don't mean specifically upgrading a building into another one. Wheat doesn't get turned into bread. Let me explain that. Everything in this game is fairly mutually exclusive. Even though your leather and wool can be turned into warm clothing and ores can be used for better tools, there's no room for commodity decision. Your villager houses will be taken over by 20 or so items which can and should be condensed so you don't have to see every fruit and nut they've hoarded. You can turn your fruits, berries, or wheats into ale at the tavern, but the fact that there's a choice that doesn't dissuade any playstyle yet there is an objective right one makes a choice worthless. It takes 30 of any fruit, 60 berries, or 100 wheat to make 10 ale. Berries are from gathering, so once you've established a bit of agriculture, you shouldn't be worried about that anymore. You get much less fruit over the course of the years as opposed to fields because the trees will die off and the orchard will be in a state of renewal after a while. A lot of the yield will be lost at the end of the season, as after a tree is gone the yield will almost never hit 100%, and the farmers won't start to harvest until the frost is almost there. So making a ton of wheat fields will grant much more ale despite the higher amount needed for ale. There's no reason not to do this as you start to escalate your town. Ale is a commodity, and being able to make so much in a pitiful farming village doesn't make much sense to me. Maybe make the requirements for the ale higher, or make it require wheat and any fruit. How about vineyards for wine, but the resources from the vineyards only go towards the winemaking? Without something like this, you get brewers bringing fish into the process. All of that was to say, make more choices. This game isn't being updated anymore and just bug fixes coming out, so let's imagine for a bit. How about a bakery that brings wheat in to make bread? I can imagine the rest of the food resources going into houses with a little imagination. Peppers and meat make a decent meal by themselves, fruits and berries are good for a person on the go, but for some reason I just can't imagine the wheat going straight into the houses. Especially with a bigger town, it shouldn't be up to the individuals to have to do this on their own. And there's no taxes or money for them to worry about, only that everybody works. This is a communist utopia that relies on people doing their jobs, but with a serious lack of choice in jobs. Work in the mines until you die 2 days after starting your job, or hope that when I assign a new worker to be a berry gatherer, it'll be you. That was a large criticism over nothing, to be honest, but it's a problem with how to make villages different. All seem to look the same after a while if you're going with a proper construction setup to bring you into the endgame of having thousands of citizens and without using building mods, which can easily become a sprawling metropolis but looks the same as an early game town just copy and pasted over. There are some more resources to worry about like firewood or warm clothing. Firewood can be created from woodcutters who take logs from the stack and turn them slowly into a necessity to survive the winter. Warm clothes from leather and warmer clothes from leather and wool. From here, the game is just about keeping your resources on par with your citizen growth. More houses need more food, but it's not hard to keep up once you have a solid footing in the early game. You may be tempted to invite nomads in to bolster your population, but I'd say it's a waste of time. They're uneducated and generally bring disease either to you or your crops. But if the idea of all your villagers being inbred causes you some panic, or if you're hemorrhaging people and can't exactly figure out why, then it's not a bad idea to bring 40 or so in. Just build an extra hospital. Trading posts are how you get different seeds or animals, and also to offload all the logs you filled your stockpiles with. It's important to remember that trading can also bring in disease. And I don't know if it's just a glitch, but sometimes my items decrease in value randomly. I can trade clothes all day and it stays consistent, but logs will drop off randomly. Now that you're here, it's all about just trying to keep going. Experiment with different buildings and look at the pretty crops or low poly sheep. The achievements are pretty time intensive and specific. Some are also pretty difficult, like surviving a harsh mountainous environment, which I will not be trying. The downsides of a sandbox game is that you want there to be more, but for the base game it really wavers in enjoyment for me after I get around 300 to 400 citizens and I watch them walk around town at 10 times speed for a few hours like an ant colony. But wait, there's something else. Why don't I have many achievements despite having a decent amount of time in the game? Well, I want to introduce mods for you. I played mainly with a few building mods on from the very beginning. For this review, I played with a few mods for quarry management and lessening the amount of food that each villager uses. For mods, I really like the mega mods like Colonial Charter, which is made by some really cool designers who want to make their own game, but I haven't heard anything about that in years, or even the tiny mods like Busy Laborers. Instead of standing around and picking the strings out of their burlap sack pants, they can also collect wild food. Or just remove a bit of difficulty and get the more items per mod for a more casual and, subjectively to me, more fun time. There are mods and options to make the game a living hell though, like more food consumption mods or a harsh environment with mountains everywhere and a hard mode start. I just wish there were a few more mods that can stabilize happiness, maybe a brothel or a theater. I tried the harder mods a few times, but I can't recommend it this way. It might be fun to masochists, but I got other games to play and hate the difficulty of. Maybe I'll go through and try to nab a few of the population achievements, but the game I have in store for the next review is also depressing and cold, so I may hold off till next year. I sound like I hate or think poorly of the game, but that's really not the case. What this game offers I actually really enjoy. With the ability to lose because of a single calculative error in the early game, it's a fun slow-paced city builder. Random events like disease or disasters keep you on your toes because one small fire or sudden tornado could put out an entire street or housing district into a boarding house. Trading leaves you open to disease, which could take you from a resource-rich and thriving town to a post-apocalyptic shithole very soon. That is, if disease would spread fast enough or if it could spawn more randomly. This isn't the cleanest place in the world, so just having a hospital in every district shouldn't be a get-out-of-jail-free card. I'm sure most of these field workers aren't the best physicians, so maybe something like being discharged because the symptoms weren't seen by the doctor could be interesting, and could lead into needing a sort of higher education building to do jobs even better, but they can't advance out of being the students later. Risk and reward. In the years that this game has been out, I don't really see it doing anything more than the WiiWare Crystal Chronicles My Life as a King game did. I love that game an unhealthy amount though, and for Banished, I'd say it's completely serviceable, despite some room for improvement that will never come officially. So open up the workshop and download some shit. As for if I recommend this game, I'd say wait for it to go on sale. It's $20 and maybe with the mods I'd say it's worth it, but I'd wait for it to be 10 to really consider it, or $5 before I say it's a sure buy. It's stubborn, graphically unimpressive, and requires a ton of trial and error, but for a game created by one man, it achieves what it set out to be. If you're looking for a game just like this, I'd say try Kingdoms Reborn when that gets some more updates. Maybe Kingdoms and Castles if you want to fight. Or for something with more substance but a bigger price tag, I'd say go pick up Anno 1800. You can roleplay and pretend your banished village became industrialized. Thank you all for watching, and it's a little late, but I hope you all had a good Thanksgiving. Oh, and Merry Christmas.